Howard and Charles Cotton. We have Ollie Howard and Charles Cotton here with us today. They are two of our expert judges from this year's panel. And we'll go through the entry process, the judging process, and a quick overview of the award ceremony. And then Ollie and Charles are here to go through their experience of the judging, what they hope to see in entries this year, what entries stand out, and then a quick overview of the panel judging and what they hope to see in panel judging versus what you submitted online. And then, of course, there's always time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to speak up at the end or pop your questions in the chat. So a few of our key dates that are upcoming. The final entry deadline is end of April, so the 25th. If you do have any questions around pricing or the entry deadline, please do get in contact with us at cipd.awards@haymarket.com. And then the shortlist will be announced in early June following the first stage of judging. And panel judging is our second stage of judging, and I'll go into this in a little bit of further detail later on in this presentation. But panel judging is the 2nd to the 4th of July, that should say 2024. So please do put a hold in your calendars for these dates as they are category dependent and we cannot change them. You will be assigned 30 minutes time slot on one of these days, which you will be notified in early June should you make the short list. But for now, please keep those dates in mind. Then you have all summer to purchase your awards tickets to the ceremony. Everyone is welcome, and it's a 3-course seated black tie dinner at Grosvenor House on the 19th of September. It's always a lovely evening. So the entry process, most of you should have already downloaded the entry kit. If you haven't, it's on our website, and I highly recommend you look through and read through all of that because it does have a lot of hints and tips, has key dates, pricing, and a lot of criteria for the categories. So I do suggest looking at that. Next, you'll register on the entry portal, and that is where you will start your category submission. You can see pages 4 through 9 in your entry kit for an overview of the entry criteria and descriptions. You are welcome to complete one entry or multiple entries. We just ask that the entries are all somewhat different. We will disqualify an entry if we do see a copy-paste situation. And the entry is a fill in the text boxes type of entry, so you don't need to upload a huge PDF. We do have supporting materials, which are optional. You can upload additional material. So that's up to 3 single pages of A4. And we'll also ask for 2 images, 1 high resolution team photo, and then 1 high resolution company logo. And we will use these images in marketing material, on our website, should you make the short list, in our award ceremony graphics. So we really look for great team photos. Those are the highlight of putting it into the award ceremony graphics. Once you've uploaded everything, you're ready to go and submit your entry. You'll just confirm your payment details at the end. If there are any discounts that you're applicable for, such as the SME discount or you're a CIPD member, that will be discounted and shown at the end on the last step. You're welcome to pay invoice or credit card. So a few hints and tips. Again, read the rules for entry on page 2 of the entry kit. Again, individualize your entry. This is your opportunity to bring your initiative to life. Demonstrate measurable results and objectives if possible. So how do your results link to the objectives? You can use the supporting material to illustrate this. Graphs are welcome, text is welcome, anything that you think will best demonstrate your results. And then again, provide some context to the project. So what did this initiative or project do for your organization? What was it meant to achieve? And then if your clients were involved, if you're a consultancy, please provide written consent from your clients. And also, it's very important to please just put a hold in their calendars for the panel judging dates, as we always recommend you bring a client or two along to the panel judging to best support your presentation. So this is just a quick overview of what the entry portal will look like. We are using a new entry portal this year for entries, and it is more aesthetically pleasing and a lot easier to use. So this is just a quick overview of what it will look like once you log in and register yourself. So you'll have a list of all the categories. If you click one, you'll then see a quick overview of the category, which is also just a copy of what is also in your entry kit. So you can click the little tick box and click enter now. And then this is what the entry submission will look like. So the questions will ask you. The 3 entry questions: describe your organization in a brief overview of your initiative. Why was the initiative necessary? How did you deliver the initiative? And how did you measure your success? There is a word cap on all of these questions, as the judges have many entries to view, so we don't want to bombard them with too much text. And again, you have your supporting material to support your entry. So now on to the judging and scoring process. So once you've submitted your entry, you're done. Best of luck. The first stage of judging is called filter judging, and our judges will go through your submissions online, and they will score the 3 main criteria points that I just listed. And then we create a methodology based on the average score and put through the highest scoring entries. And this is how you make the finalist shortlist. So your shortlist is announced. Let's say you're a finalist, you've made the shortlist in early June, and you have about a month to reschedule, get ready. You're giving your time slot, so please do keep an eye out for the shortlist coming out in early June. We'll also announce it on the people management website, and you will also be notified by email should you make it or should you not make it. Finalists are given their time slot. Again, you can't change the day. We will try our best to accommodate a change in time should it work with other finalists. So you will have 30 minutes to present virtually over Zoom. And this is your opportunity to bring your presentation to life. So we suggest not regurgitating what has already been presented in your online entry, but what else do you want to share about your presentation additionally, because the judges have already seen your online entry. So what other information should they know about your initiative? So you'll have 15 minutes to do a virtual presentation. This can be a PowerPoint, this can be just images, this can just be purely discussion. After 15 minutes, you have 15 minutes of Q&A with the panel of judges. And you are the only finalist in the room when you are presenting. The judges usually have a list of questions that they'll ask all of the participants. And then at the end of the day, the judges have a full discussion of all the presenters and determine the winner of each category. We will provide feedback, but only after the award ceremony. So the award ceremony, all winners will be announced on the 19th of September at the JW Marriott Grosvenor House. It is an evening drinks, it starts with an evening drinks reception, followed by a 3-course dinner, and then the exciting awards ceremony with a celebrity host. And then there's plenty of time in the evening to celebrate your win and also just network with all of the finalists and the judges in the room. Tickets will go on sale in early May. We have individual tickets. We have discounts for CIPD members, students, charities, and SME. And if you purchase a table of 10, you get a slight discount versus purchasing several tickets. If you are interested in the premium tables, those are tables that are located right up front by the stage. And there's added benefits to those. So you can check out our website if you have any further information, any further queries around that. So then on to the whole reason you're here as part of the webinar is you're here to speak with our fellow judges, Charles Cotton and Ollie Howard. So I will turn it over to you both. But we did go through your registration form and noted down a few of the main questions that a lot of you had. If some of your questions are not answered in this section, please feel free to pop them in the chat, and Charles and Ollie will be happy to address those. So Ollie and Charles, I'll let you both introduce yourselves, and then we'll go into just the list of questions that really just stand out for most of the finalists.
Okay, thanks, Monica. So I'll go first. I'm Ollie Howard. I'm head of membership at the CIPD. I've been judging the PMAs, I think, for 5 years now, and across a range of the different categories. Charles?
Yes, and thanks for that, Ollie and Monica. I'm Charles. I'm a specialist in terms of the CIPD, in terms of pay and benefits or reward. And I've been judging the reward category now for about more than 10 years now. So seen quite a lot of initiatives over that time.
Monica, do you just want us to dive into some of the questions you gave us before?
Yeah, I think so. So why don't we start with just what you're looking for in entries, what winning entries stand out from past years that you've witnessed. What should our entrants focus on in their entries in the online entry? And then we can go into the panel judging and what presentations have stood out to you the most in that part of the judging.
Yeah, okay. Why don't I kick off on what we're looking for in an entry then? So I guess the first thing for me is the three things that we score on the basis of Monica already highlighted on the previous slide, and each of those things is important, and we're looking for real clarity in each of them. So clarity on the business issue first and foremost. So to what extent can we see the justification for the activity you've then engaged in your analysis of the business problem that this is addressing? There was one of the winners last year where I think it was a college in Swansea, and they're focused particularly on providing tailored support for employees going through menopause. And that obviously is the kind of, that's an issue that we at the CIPD have been encouraging organizations to do more on, but it was particularly relevant for them because of the high proportion of teaching staff that they had who were women in their 40s to 50s. And it was particularly relevant because recruiting for teachers and retaining teachers is particularly challenging at the moment. So the business problem that they really needed to respond to was being able to retain a key cohort of their employees in an environment where it'd be very hard for them to replace those people. So as well as being the right thing to do and in line with CIPD positioning, it was also something that was a clear business challenge for them. So you could see why they had focused resource in that area. And then in that entry, they took us through the ways in which they provided that tailored support and then showed us some clear evaluation, which I guess we'll come on to later, of how that made a difference to their retention of that group of employees. Charles?
Yes, what you say, Ollie. But I mean, I think it's important, the ones that have stood out, there's a clear explanation about why the initiative was launched and also why that approach was adopted as opposed to other possible approaches. So I suppose, for example, if you're using, you decided to use a recognition initiative, why was that decided upon as opposed to, for instance, launching a new benefit or increasing pay, for instance? and also how that initiative supports the business and the people strategy. I suppose another important thing is that when you talk about the drivers behind why the initiative was launched, going then to use those drivers to assess the impact of the initiative. So, for example, if the aim of the program was to improve employee financial well-being, then subsequently we'd expect that to be one of the success criteria that you kind of address later on in your entry.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we move on to key themes? Which I suppose the first thing I'd say on that is that it can be anything, and it's really context dependent. How the environment impacts different organizations is different, and people's strategies or initiatives can respond to any element of that, and they need to respond to the unique circumstances affecting the organization or the client that you're talking about. So we're always looking for entries that respond to those unique circumstances and are really clear in the way that I think Charles and I have both given examples of that. Also, those that reflect the values at the heart of the CIPD profession map, which are around making use of evidence, applying principles, and delivering impact by being clear on the outcomes you're trying to achieve. But then those things are always important, no matter what the context is. I guess there are some things that we'd specifically expect to see more entries on this time around, and there always are each year. So remember last year we were still seeing quite a lot of kind of COVID recovery submissions, so organizations attempting to rebuild their business models post COVID and engaging in change activities to try and restaff or to re-engage people or to change working practices. That was quite a big thing last year. This year, I'd expect to see quite a lot on technology. In particular, it wouldn't surprise me if we've seen more and more entries around how organizations are reskilling their workforces due to the changes brought about by AI and other technologies, and how organizations are working to shift their use of technology and how that sits alongside their management of their people. So I'd expect to see quite a bit on that. I think that given the economic circumstances, there's an increasing tension perhaps between the needs of employees and employers. That successful attempts to acknowledge and address that, which would be extremely challenging. That I would expect to see more on than we've seen previously. Charles, I don't know what you'd add to that list.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say, as you said, Ollie, some of the themes are ever present. So, we would hopefully expect to see you referencing things like the profession map, but also, as Ollie said, the themes kind of emerge from the economic context. So everyone is feeling a little skint this year. So I'd imagine many of the entries will be looking at how they adopted value for money in terms of the initiative itself, but also how it was implemented. So how it was communicated, how it was launched. I'd expect to see kind of the themes appear there, but also things around importance of transparency, how you kind of communicating what you're doing to your employees and assessing if they understand well what you're trying to achieve and how that's recognized. Sorry, I've got a cat has launched itself. So yes, so those that I'd imagine would be some of the key themes that would be appearing in my area around reward, but they might be appearing in other categories as well.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of it's quite category dependent as well. There's definitely been a shift in terms of technology and skills, and in terms of where people are focusing their L&D activities, and there's an L&D category. So I think it's a bit category dependent, it's a bit context dependent, and there are probably some broad themes that we'd see play out as well. But I don't think that those things particularly advantage or disadvantage you when it comes to your submission, as long as you're setting out clearly, as we kind of said in response to that first question, how you're responding to your business context and making good decisions around where to focus people management activity. That's what we're really looking for, and then for that work to be clearly and demonstrably impactful. Shall we move on to format? So I guess if we start by talking about what really helps with the online submission, and then we move on to talk about the panel sessions. The online submission, as judges, we'll see quite a lot of these, and the format for them is all pretty much the same. It's text on the page. So to make something really stand out, the thing that makes the biggest difference for me as a judge is the clarity in each of those 3 steps. So tell me a story that gives me an understanding of the business problem, which I've talked about a lot already, the activities that you then chose to engage in, and I think Charles makes a good point around, you know, there's lots of potential choices that you could make for how you address an issue like building new skills into the organization. Why did you choose the things that you chose? And give us a real picture of what was done as well. Sometimes we see some entries where it can be a little bit vague, trying to work out exactly what the activity was. So give us a very clear picture of what the activity was and why it was selected, how it responded to the business problem, and then some evaluation of its success. I can see there's a question further down there on the extent to which it needs to be completed. We can talk about that a little bit more later, but I would say that we need to see something. We need to see something in terms of the work that's been delivered and the difference that is made, and that needs to correspond to the original business problem that you identified for us. It's the join up between those 3 things set out really clearly and simply that makes the biggest difference, I think. Anything you'd add on the online piece, Charles?
It's only a minor point, but if you are using attachments, let us, I suppose, in the document explain what the attachments are. Why you're using the attachments. So for instance, sometimes people use attachments to kind of analyze in more depth about what the drivers were. So for instance, it was an employee attitude survey that led to the initiative. So if that is being submitted as evidence, then perhaps in your entry, say, as Annex A says or Appendix B says, you know, this is where more information can be found about the evidence that we used to assess why this initiative had to be launched. Or similarly, if you use an attachment as well to kind of give more information about the impact, again, mention that. Often I'll be going through the attachments and then suddenly realize that's where the information that I was looking for in the entry is contained. So having clear signposts obviously is important.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And then perhaps let's talk about the panel judging stage a little bit. I love the panel judging stage, and I think it's a really nice thing about the PMAs that it has it. Not all award schemes do. It's a great opportunity for us to find out more about the work and to really have a clear image in our minds of what was done. It's also just great to meet professionals, and it's great to have that opportunity to see some fantastic examples of work that's been done by people.
Emily, are you dressed, darling? Do you want some breakfast?
Yeah, that's great, thank you. In terms of the panel stage, I guess the things I'd say about that, so it's 15 minutes presentation, 15 minutes discussion. As I chair one of the panels, and I think that it makes a real difference when people come in rehearsed. So I wouldn't recommend reading from a script, but definitely come in having run through it a few times at least, and make sure that you've timed it well. So if you find you're halfway through and you're rushing through the rest of it, then you won't be able to tell us the story in the best way. So make sure that you're managing time and you've distributed the main things that you want to tell us across the 15 minutes. It makes a real difference when somebody comes in and they've clearly done that and they've planned out their time, planned out the narrative they want to present us with, and deliver us that over the course of the 15. The other thing I'd say about the presentation section of it is the slides should be, if you're presenting slides, it should be an aid to that story. So to signpost the way through it and leave a really clear impression in our minds as a panel of the shape of the work and the difference it's made. If there's tons and tons of additional data or points on there, we won't get to read those. We won't have an opportunity in the reflection back that we do afterwards, which is a relatively limited amount of time to go over exhaustive amounts of additional detail. And if we're trying to read them while you're talking, then we're not listening properly to you. So no, that's a generic piece of advice, but we do often see people try to cram a lot of additional information in, and it can distract from what you're trying to do rather than focus on what you're trying to tell us. So that's important for the presentation bit of it. And the last thing I would say on the panel judging is, if you get to that stage, just go into it remembering that the panels are made up of people from within the CIPD who work really closely with the profession, or fellow professionals. We all love the profession. We all want you to do a really good job. We're friendly, supportive people. We're not there to drag you over the coals. It should be a great opportunity for you to share the brilliant work you've done with us. And I really wouldn't want people to feel hugely nervous about coming into it. It's a conversation, and that's all it is. It shouldn't feel intimidating. It's an opportunity for us to find out more about you and what you've done. Charles, sorry, I went on a bit there.
No, that's fine. I mean, the only thing perhaps I would add is to have a plan B. Sometimes technology doesn't work, your slides don't appear, or possibly one of your co-presenters doesn't appear. So think about how you would present on the day if there was a problem. Often, you know, we try and, you know, make accommodations, but sometimes, you know, things happen. And it's best to think about, well, if the worst did happen and we had to change our presentation, how would we do that? Hopefully it wouldn't happen on the day, but you never know, just in case.
Videos playing without sound, things like that. Yeah, we'll always try and make sure everything works for you. Yeah, sometimes simpler is better. There's a question here about ongoing projects. So I guess this is if you've not completed something and therefore not had a chance to fully evaluate it, to what extent can that still make a good submission? Is that the essence of that question, Monica? Yeah, okay. So I think it is possible to do. We do need to see some evaluation. So the strongest entries and the ones that are most likely to be shortlisted and the ones most likely to be winners are those where you can say, the thing we have done has demonstrably made a difference, and here is an indication of how. That difference doesn't need to be complete, because I guess no work ever really is complete, but there need to be enough signals of that. In terms of what type of evidence it is, it needs to be credible. So if you originally set out to make a difference to, let's say, how an organization manages performance, then we need to see evidence that the way the organization manages performance and its performance outcomes have shifted to some degree. So a statement from a stakeholder that they're very happy with a new process is nice, but it doesn't demonstrate to us that the original objective has been fulfilled. So the more that you can do that through the evidence you offer us, the better. But we do appreciate that the extent to which that's possible for all projects varies. One thing I would suggest is, if you've got a large piece of work and you want to tell us about all of that, so let's say you're doing a complete rework of your employer brand and you haven't completed the whole of that, but you have done the bit that's concerned with induction, for example, then focus the entry on the induction portion of it, position it within the context of the broader employer brand work. But if you focus on that element of it and talk to us about why that element was necessary within the context of the bigger piece, the work that you did to change the way that induction functioned, and then the difference that that made to the experience of new employees, then that allows you to give us something that's more self-contained than if you want to tell us about everything employer brand work related, but you haven't got the metrics to demonstrate how the employer brand has shifted in its fullest extent. That can be helpful. Charles, are you going to add anything to that on I guess this happens a fair bit with reward actually, because you quite often won't have all of the evidence.
Yeah, I mean, what we advise is either, to wait see, but it may be that some entries, when they submit the first time online, they're perhaps in the 10th month. So you could say, well, we haven't got a year's worth of evidence yet, but we are looking to get that, and it may be that when we then come to the panel judging, then they will have the 12 months and have the opportunity then to talk about that. I suppose the other important thing would be, if they don't, talking about, well, what type of evidence they're looking for and how they're going to collect that and how they're going to assess that would be important to give an indication that an organization has thought about how they're going to assess that initiative that they've submitted.
And in terms of the types of data and analytics required, which is the next question on here, I guess that would quite often be quant in terms of the category you review, Charles, or does it vary?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose in terms of quantitative, you've got two areas. One is, the impact on the business, and the other area is, impact on people. So everything from recruitment and turnover to employee engagement, and in terms of business performance, sales, revenue, etc. But obviously qualitative can be useful as well. So, what are employees thinking about this in terms of, so if it's a recognition scheme, what they think about it, in terms of, what it was like to be nominated, and perhaps also looking outside the organization, if that's possible, looking at what customers or clients think about how the organization has changed since this initiative has been launched.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I suppose the other thing I'd say about what types of evidence to include are just making sure it's relevant to the original purpose. Sometimes it's quite tempting to include some numbers because they're going in the right direction and they feel they might be related on a tangent. But what I think we're really looking to see is an evaluation against the original objectives, and for that to be done using the best evidence you've got available, but within that specific context. Again, that's one where I think sometimes we see people present engagement scores having moved a few points, but for a relatively contained activity. So then you have to question as a judge the extent to which the initiative itself has made the difference to those scores moving. Again, that can be acknowledged within your presentation, but I think what we're looking to see is a kind of honest evaluation of the results of the work that's been done. I think we've run through the full list, Monica. Have we got any others?
Does anyone have any questions that have not been addressed? You're welcome to pop them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask in person. While we wait for a few more questions. Oh, go ahead. Was someone going to ask a question? Well, while we wait for a few questions to come in, I do know that there was one that recently came in through the inbox, and they were asking, could they submit multiple initiatives under one entry, or should they just focus on one initiative? Again, there is the word cap and limited supporting material. What would you suggest? Just focusing on one initiative? This kind of ties into what you were discussing earlier about the ongoing project.
I tend to prefer focus myself, Monica. Again, there's a little bit of a judgment call to be made there, in that you don't want something to be so granular that you feel like it hasn't moved the dial for the organization in any significant way. But in general, I'd rather see something focused around a clearly defined area of activity that I, as a judge, can understand, and I think that makes it easier to demonstrate impact as well. because you can trace a clearer line from we changed this thing and it made this difference. So I'd always tend to err on that side of the two.
Okay, thank you. We do have one question from Liz. Thank you very much for speaking up. She says, I'm interested on whether the size of the program matters. For example, if it is a smaller business or team, but it has a big impact for that team.
I don't think that team size or organization size matters. I think that one thing we consider as judges is we look at the inputs and the outputs. So how much resource and time and effort and money had to go into the initiative and how much difference was achieved for that. And we'll always judge those two things in proportion to each other. So if you look back over past winners, we've had past winners from organizations of all size, from massive multinationals to SMEs, and when we, it's just part of the job of the filter judges and the panel judges to try and make sure that we are being fair across all those categories. But I think in the range of winners that we've seen over well, certainly the past few years, I think it's clearly demonstrated that we do that, and that you can win as an organization of any size. You're not at a disadvantage if you're massive, you're not at a disadvantage if you're small.
We have another question. Are there any common mistakes that an organization should avoid when submitting their L&D programs? Are there any key lessons that have been learned from previous award cycles?
The L&D is a category I haven't judged in the past, but I would say that they're likely to be the same types of mistakes that are made by I'd say most of the mistakes that get made are common across all of the categories. I guess that's probably true, Monica. You see more of this across the piece than me. Yeah. Yes, so it's not framing the business issue clearly. Why was the L&D initiative important for the organization? What business issue does it respond to? Setting out for us in very clear terms what was done and the choices that were made around that, and then evaluating the difference that that's made versus those original objectives that were set out. As long as we get that very clearly, then I think that that's the most important thing. That's as true for L&D as it is for the other categories.
Yeah, and I think I'll also just add, try not to bring too many people to the presentation stage, because you want to ensure that your presentation is being presented. You're not trying to cram too much information and to get everyone to speak. So we always suggest 2 to 3 people maximum in the panel judging session. We have a few more questions. How do we make our projects stand out for a large organization where the impact may not be reflected as much?
Charles, do you want to take that one?
Yes, potentially goes back to an earlier point about employer size. So whilst if you're a small organization, you may necessarily have the resources to devote to initiative. Because of the size, perhaps you would expect all entrants to have a better understanding about the impact sooner, because they're looking at an organization perhaps with 40 people or 60 people, as opposed to an organization with 10,000. It can be a lot harder for those types of organizations to collect and analyze all the data to see whether it's had an impact, especially if those organizations are international and it's an international initiative. You're waiting for various jurisdictions to submit information. I think in those instances, then perhaps does mean that you should perhaps at least wait 12 months before submitting, because then you should have that information to hand if you're a large organization. Whilst if you're a smaller or one, you could have an idea about whether it's working within about 4 or 5 months. In terms of, I think, an earlier question about multiple entries, I'd agree with what Ollie has said. I suppose the only difference would be if you are talking about our regional awards, So if you've submitted a reward entry to to the CIPD Wales or North Awards, then I'd say you could also submit it to the CIPD National Awards as well.
Thank you both. We have another question. Again, focusing on the L&D program. This individual is, they are implementing a program to start in 2 weeks for about 4 months. Can we participate in the CIPD Awards with an ongoing program, or is it required to be completed? This kind of goes into the answer you provided earlier, Ollie, about being able to provide some metric on part of the initiative or part of the stage.
Yes, it depends a little on the rollout plan. If you've, so for example, if you've had a successful pilot and got really strong evaluation back from that, then that could provide you with enough evidence. If you're doing a staggered rollout and you've got it to some parts of the business, but not all of them, and the evaluation from that's looked really positive, then again, that might provide you with enough. Obviously, you're always going to be in a stronger position if you've got further into your rollout and you've got more evidence that it's demonstrating impact. I can't say that won't put you in a stronger position. It will. You need something at least to demonstrate that the work is meeting the objectives for the organization. But I wouldn't say you necessarily need to have got through the whole way through it. In some cases, a large L&D program in a large organization could take 2 to 3 years to roll out. You might not want to wait until the end of that. That's fine.
I think those are all the questions. Does anyone else have any other questions before we wrap up? Well, thank you very much, Ollie and Charles. Is there anything you would add that hasn't been addressed?
No, just thank people for their interest. I absolutely love the PMAs. It's one of my favorite things I do as part of my job, just because it provides us with an opportunity to see the best of what the profession's doing, and that's what we're all about. So I really appreciate people's interest, and I hope to see some submissions from people later on in the year.
Excellent. Charles, do you have anything to add, or?
No, apart from, please submit your entries. If you have got a great story to tell, then please tell it. And the insights are very useful as well, because not only is it for the PMAs, but we use it in the research that we do, the practice that we do, our public policy. So all the entries are very valuable in other areas of the work that we do at the CIPD as well. So yes, it's a great initiative, and I'd welcome as many people to enter as possible.
Great, thank you both. If anyone has any other queries around deadlines, your entries, issues you're having with the entry portal, or questions around categories and criteria, please email us at cipd.awards@haymarket.com. Again, just to reiterate what our judges said, we're very excited that you're interested in entering the PMAs. It's a wonderful recognition of the work you're doing with your teams. So we do hope to see your entries come in. Thank you everyone for joining today, and thank you again, Charles and Ollie, for your time. I think everyone found this very informative and helpful.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.